They destroyed Earth and left only ashes, but the Caitians made one fatal mistake. Some humans survived. Now those few remaining were determined to see the Caitian worlds burn. Michael Carter crouched in the filthy bowels of the warship, muscles aching from hours of forced labor under Overseer Oren's cruel watch. The ruthless Caitians had unleashed planet-killing weapons on Earth, reducing Michael's homeworld to a lifeless husk and slaughtering billions in an instant. Only a scant few million humans endured, either as slaves in the Caitian regime or scattered to distant space colonies. Suddenly, a thunderous blast rocked the ship. Alarms blared. Shouts echoed through the halls. A rebel attack. Seizing his chance, Michael charged Oren, snapping the Overseer's neck with a brutal twist. He stripped the corpse of weapons and keycards, then sprinted for the shuttle bay. Minutes later, Michael was soaring away in a stolen shuttle, following a pre-recorded transmission to a secret rally point. In the lawless Terminus system, he found the patchwork remnants of humanity gathering to build a resistance. Hatred seared Michael's heart as he gazed upon his battle-scarred kin. The Caitians would pay for Earth's destruction. He would make sure of it. But to wage war against an empire, the survivors needed more than just rage and grief. They required weapons, resources, a plan. So Michael assembled a crew of the most daring and bereaved, leading them on brazen raids of Caitian slave camps and supply depots. They hit hard and fast, freeing captive humans and stockpiling armaments. Intel captured in their strikes revealed the location of Jalthak, a secret installation where the Caitians engineered their planet killers. The odds of success were near zero. Even infiltrating Jalthak would be a suicide mission. But Michael knew it was the only way to seize the devastating weapons for themselves, the only way to have a prayer of striking back at the heart of Caitian power. He looked around at his ragged band of rebels, faces etched with loss and grim determination. They all understood the stakes. Humanity's future hung by a thread. The dead billions of Earth cried out for vengeance. The Caitians intended to exterminate humans as a species. If the resistance failed, extinction loomed. But the Caitian Empire would soon learn the folly of their arrogance. They thought they could destroy humanity's home and simply erase them from the stars. Michael's lips curled back in a feral smile. No, the Caitians were about to discover what happened when you left humans with nothing to lose. You gave them the motivation to fight to the last breath. You gave them the burning desire to balance the scales of a horrifically lopsided war. You gave them the will to make the most ruthless, genocidal regime in the galaxy tremble. The Caitians were about to face an enemy unlike any before, an enemy that would not stop until Caitian worlds burned like Earth, an enemy that would see entire star systems bathed in blood and flames, just as humanity's had been. They destroyed Earth. Now it was humanity's turn to destroy them. One world at a time. The stolen shuttle shuddered as it dropped out of warp at the edge of the Jalthak system. Michael Carter gripped the controls, his knuckles tightening beneath tattered gloves. Beyond the viewport, the secret Caitian installation hung in space like a bloated tick, its mottled gray hull dripping with gun emplacements and sensor arrays. "Ugly piece of shit," muttered Grayson Stark, Michael's second-in-command. The grizzled veteran absently stroked the plasma rifle across his lap as he studied the readouts, picking up some strange power fluctuations from the lower levels, possible manufacturing bays. Michael nodded grimly. Intel indicated this was where the Caitians built their planet killers, the same devastating weapons that had burned Earth to cinders. Rage simmered in his gut at the memory, but he pushed it down. Jalthak represented a chance to seize those monstrous armaments for the resistance, to finally bring ruin to Caitian worlds as they had to humanity's homeworld. "Take us in slow," he ordered. "Passive scans only. Let's not wake the beast until we're ready to put a round through its fucking eye." The shuttle crept closer, skating the edge of Jalthak's sensor envelope. Michael studied the base's defenses, searching for any sign that they'd been detected. But no alarms blared. No fighter wings scrambled to intercept them. His lip curled. The Caitians' arrogance would be their downfall. At 2 kilometers out, Michael killed the engines and signaled the go code. Around the shuttle, 10 other rebel craft shimmered into view as they dropped their cloaks, including 2 heavily armed Zotharian frigates. The alien ships had been hell to acquire, but Zara Krell always delivered for the right price. Without a word, the rebel force split into 2 groups. The Zotharian frigates and 4 of the shuttles turned their bows toward Jalthak's primary docking bay, while Michael led the remaining ships in a flank approach, aiming for the installation's vulnerable reactor housing. "Grayson, prep the package." Michael jerked his chin toward the modified torpedo, waiting in the shuttle's cramped cargo bay, its warhead packed with an EMP charge potent enough to fry every shield generator and defense turret on Jalthak's eastern sector. "Let's give those cats something to chase while we sneak in the back door." Grayson flashed a predatory grin and headed aft. Michael counted down the seconds, his fingers hovering over the fire control. On his mark, the rebel ships opened up as one, unleashing a blistering salvo of plasma rounds and proton torpedoes. Jalthak's shields flared and alarms howled as the initial barrage slammed home. The Cation installation wheeled ponderously, its own cannons swiveling to return fire, but too slow. The rebels' EMP torpedo streaked through a gap in the shields and detonated, sending a crackling wave of energy washing over the hull. Generator domes burst in showers of sparks, and defense batteries fell dark. "Go!" Michael shouted over the comm. "Boarding teams, deploy!" Drop pods spat from rebel ships, hurtling through the smoke and debris toward Jalthak's ravaged hull. Shaped breach charges blew ragged holes in the armor, and rebel troops poured through, weapons spitting fire. Cation defenders rallied in the corridors, but Michael's forces hit them like a hammer blow, driving deep into the installation. "Main docking bay is secure," reported Jenna Merrick, one of Michael's most trusted officers. "We're pushing on to central control." "Copy that," Michael said, slamming a fresh power cell into his rifle. "We'll rendezvous at the target. If this intel is right, that's where we'll find the planet killer control systems and deployment plans." He ducked a burst of plasma fire and put a round through the faceplate of a Cation trooper. Grayson and the rest of the team fanned out, leapfrogging down the smoldering corridors. Bulkheads shuddered as more breaching pods impacted the hull. The whole station was a mad swirl of strobing red alert panels, smoke, and weapons fire. And then suddenly, an eerie calm as they reached the heavy blast doors of central control. The team took up positions, reloading and checking charges. Michael nodded to Grayson, who fixed a block of detonax to the door's locking mechanisms. The explosives whump-thumped, and the barrier crumpled inward, ripped off its tracks. Michael rolled through, rifle up and scanning. Banks of consoles and data cores filled the chamber, attended by a handful of white-uniformed Cation techs. They blinked at the invaders in momentary shock before scrambling for sidearms, but it was already too late. Rebel guns barked and Cation bodies crumpled. In seconds, the command center was secure. Michael crossed to the primary data terminal as his team took up defensive positions. His armor's onboard VIAC scanned the files, sifting for intel on the planet killers, and his blood ran cold. "Sir?" Grayson asked, catching the look on his face. "The weapon production data, it's not just Earth." Michael swallowed bile. "They're preparing planet killers for strikes on a dozen major colonies. Axiom, Xianyang, New Helsinki." He slammed a fist into the console, rage and despair warring within him. "Those sadistic monsters are going to burn all of them. They're trying to wipe out humanity entirely." "Like hell they will," Grayson snarled. "We won't let them. This is our chance to stop it and gut these bastards in the process." Michael took a breath, the cold equations of war clicking into place. "You're right." He accessed the controls, fingers flying over the hollow keys. "I'm sabotaging the energy cores and siphoning all data on the weapon systems. With these plans and control codes, we can turn the Cation's own planet killers against them." A harsh klaxon pierced the air, an angry blurt of Cation voices echoing through Jalthak's halls. They were out of time. "Jenna, we've got the intel and the control systems are fragged," Michael reported over the comm. "Give the evac order and get everyone back to the ships. We are leaving." Acknowledgement clicks sounded as rebel teams disengaged and fell back to their entry points, laying down mines and suppressive fire to cover their retreat. Michael took one last look around the burning command center at the ghastly plans for genocide on the cracked screens and spat in disgust. Then he turned and ran, Grayson close on his heels. They bounded through the ravaged corridors as Jalthak shook itself apart, secondary explosions rumbling through its hull. Ahead, the evac shuttles crouched in their blast craters, waiting. But the Caitians weren't letting their prize escape so easily. Felines in black armor poured from side passages, hissing and unleashing blistering volleys that sent rebels stumbling and sprawling, dead or wounded. Michael dove into an alcove, sighting down his rifle at the mass of enemies now standing between his retreating forces and their escape craft. "Grayson!" he shouted over the din. "Take the data core and get to the shuttle. I'll hold them." His friend hesitated only a split second before giving a curt nod. Michael shoved the vital intel into Grayson's hands, then rose and charged into the teeth of the Caitian guns, a battle cry on his lips. He felt rounds glance off his armor, felt the shudder of his own weapon firing on full auto. A plasma bolt seared along his ribs. He dropped a clip, slammed home another. And suddenly Grayson was beside him again, a defiant roar bellowing from the older man's throat as he raked the Caitians with fire. Michael had a momentary flash of irritation that his orders had been disobeyed, but it was drowned in the flood of battle adrenaline. Together they held the line, buying precious seconds for their comrades to reach the shuttles. Rifles hammered, grenades burst in eye-searing flashes, armored bodies piled in heaps, rebel and Caitian alike. Until finally the evac ships lifted off in a hurricane of thrusters and shrieking metal. Michael staggered back, his gun clicking empty. Jalthak heaved and quaked, coming apart at the seams. "Grayson, move your ass! Go!" He shoved his friend toward the last ascending shuttle, then turned and threw himself at the remaining Caitians in a suicidal charge, determined to buy the escape craft a few more seconds. Claws and knives and rifle butts battered at him. He felt bones break, felt blood seeping through the rents in his armor. By sheer force of will, he stayed on his feet, dealing out punishing blows with the last of his waning strength. Through pain-glazed eyes, he glimpsed the shuttle dwindling into the smoke-choked sky. They'd made it. The mission was a success. The intel was safe. Only then did he let himself fall. He hit the deck, a Caitian boot slamming down on his neck. A harsh feline face filled his swim vision, lips skinning back from fangs in a triumphant sneer. Michael spat blood and bared his own teeth in defiance. And Jalthak exploded around them in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel as the sabotaged reactor finally went critical. Michael Carter knew no more. Agony dragged Michael back to the shores of consciousness. He floated in a tank of viscous fluid, dimly aware of tubes snaking into his flesh and the sting of nano-sutures working to knit bone and sinew. Back to tank, his battered mind supplied, the faint scent of recycled air and antiseptic, the soft beep of medical monitors. He was alive. Somehow. With an effort, he cracked open his eyes. A concerned face swam into view, Jenna Merrick, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her expression sagged with relief at seeing him awake. "You scared the hell out of us, Michael," she said softly. "When the shuttle got back, Grayson almost tore the ship apart, trying to mount a rescue op to dig you out of that mess. But the data you recovered, it was worth it." "Did everyone?" His voice rasped like rusted nails in his raw throat. Jenna's expression fell. She reached out to rest a hand on the glass of the tank. "Not everyone. Jalthak, a lot of good people died there, including Grayson. He held the rear guard so the last evac shuttle could lift off, so you could get clear with the intel." Tears glinted in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Michael." The news hit him like a hammer blow, driving the air from his lungs. Grayson, his friend, his rock, the man who'd pulled him from the wreckage of Earth and given him purpose again. Gone. Grief and guilt and rage swirled into a storm inside him. He wanted to howl denial, to bargain, to beg whatever uncaring gods might be listening to undo this fresh horror. But he could only float there, helpless and raging, as Jenna's next words filtered through the anguish. He'd want us to finish this. We have to. The data you brought back confirmed our worst fears. The Caitians are gearing up for a final push to wipe us out entirely. They're going to hit a dozen major colonies with planet killers, and more are in production. Jenna's lips thinned into a determined line. But thanks to you, we now have the means to fight back. Schematics, deployment algorithms, control codes, everything we need to turn their own weapons against them. She leaned close, her gaze intent. We're taking the fight to the Caitians, Michael. We've already hit 3 supply convoys and liberated hundreds of human slaves. Our ranks are growing, and we've made contact with a Caitian scientist named Alara Voss, who says she has intel on a bioweapon the cats are developing to starve us out as a people. She wants to help create a counteragent. Michael blinked hard, his thoughts feeling thick and slow. This was too much. They'd struck a blow against the Caitians, yes, but at a terrible cost. And now there were planet killer strikes to stop, a bioweapon to counter, and an entire theocratic stellar empire that wanted humanity wiped from the face of the galaxy. It seemed an impossible task. But Grayson had given everything for this chance, this narrow glimmer of hope for humanity's survival. Michael couldn't let his friend's sacrifice be in vain. He met Jenna's eyes, feeling the familiar cold settle over him. The icy, diamond-hard wrath that had sustained him through so much. They'd stolen the Caitians' fire. Now it was time to unleash the inferno on those genocide-hungry fanatics. Tell me everything, he rasped. Every detail about these new threats. We start planning the counterattack the moment I'm out of this tank. Jenna nodded grimly, but he saw the flicker of vengeful anticipation in her eyes. The Caitian Empure wanted humanity to burn. Michael and every remaining human in the galaxy would see the Caitian worlds blasted to cinders first. No matter what it took, no matter how far they had to go. For Earth, for Grayson, and for every human soul snuffed out by Caitian claws. The Caitian homeworlds would burn. This, Michael swore. Michael's recovery was swift, driven by urgency and the burning need for vengeance. Within days, he was back on his feet, poring over intelligence reports and coordinating strikes against Caitian targets. The rebel fleet struck hard and fast, hammering supply lines and liberating human slaves. But for every victory, the Empire seemed to have a cruel counter. Reports flooded in of a new bioweapon ravaging human colonies, engineered to destroy crops and spread famine. We need to hit them where it hurts, Michael growled, studying tactical holomaps with Jenna and Dr. Voss. Cut off the head of the snake. Intelligence pointed to a massive staging area on Vakthar Station, a sprawling orbital complex where the Caitians were amassing their invasion fleets. It was the perfect target, a crippling blow that could buy humanity precious time. But as they finalized plans for the assault, an urgent transmission came through. Michael's blood ran cold as he recognized the face on the screen. Alara, he whispered, scarcely believing his eyes. His sister, thought lost in the fall of Earth, was alive, and a prisoner on Vakthar Station. "Help me, Michael," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "They're going to—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Michael's hands clenched into fists, his mind racing. They had to strike Vakthar, had to cripple the Caitian war machine. But Alara— He made his decision in grim silence. The assault on Vakthar was brutal and swift. Rebel ships tore through the station's outer defenses, while strike teams infiltrated its labyrinthine corridors. Michael led the push toward the reactor core, every fiber of his being screaming to divert, to search for Alara. But he pressed on, heart made and eyes hard. The mission had to come first. Always. They reached the reactor chamber, Caitian defenders falling before their relentless advance. As his team set the charges, Michael allowed himself one moment of anguish for Alara, then he triggered the detonator. Vakthar Station erupted in a silent blossom of fire, the Caitian invasion fleet reduced to scattered debris. It was a staggering blow to the Empire's war effort. But the victory felt hollow as Michael watched the explosion from the bridge of their fleeing ship. imagining Alara's final moments. Another piece of his humanity burned away in that inferno. There was no time to mourn. Dr. Voss brought grim news of the bioweapons deployment. Entire colonies were starving, surrendering to the Caitians, or dying by inches. "We need more allies," Jenna insisted. "We can't fight this war alone." Michael nodded, his expression stone. "Contact Zara Krell. Tell her to reach out to the Velnari. It's time we gave the Empire a taste of their own medicine." As Voss worked feverishly on a counteragent, Michael threw himself into the fight with cold fury. They would make the Caitians pay for every human life, for Earth, for Grayson, for Alara. The war raged on, but now the tide was turning. Velnari swarms and Zotharian warships joined their cause. Michael watched with grim satisfaction as Caitian worlds erupted in rebellion, the oppressed masses rising up against their masters. But true victory remained elusive. As long as Emperor Khazrakor lived, the Caitian war machine would grind on. It was time to strike at the very heart of the Empire. Michael stared at his reflection in the Zotharian ceremonial armor, barely recognizing himself. In a matter of hours, he would be within striking distance of Khazrakor himself. One shot to end it all. He allowed himself a thin, mirthless smile. After all the blood and sacrifice, after all they'd lost, it would end here, on Azkalir, at the tip of his blade. The center would not hold. The Caitian Empire would fall. And humanity would rise from the ashes. The blade slid between Khazrakor's ribs with a sickening crunch. Michael twisted, feeling the Emperor's last breath gurgle past his ear. As the Caitian's massive frame slumped to the ornate floor, Michael allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. It was done. The tyrant was dead. But his victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the Imperial Palace as Michael sprinted through gilded corridors, dodging plasma bolts from shocked guards. He burst onto a balcony overlooking the sprawling capital of Azkalir, his extraction team's stealth shuttle swooping in low. As he leapt aboard, Michael caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the chaos below, a human woman with haunted eyes. Alara, she was alive. But before he could process the shock, the shuttle's engines roared and Azkalir fell away beneath them. Days later, reports flooded in of Prince Jokazran's violent ascension to the throne, the new emperor's first decree, the complete extermination of humanity. "It's happening," Jenna said grimly, studying tactical readouts. "Just like your sister warned us." Michael's fist tight. "We have to—" The ship rocked violently, claxons wailing. On the console, a massive Caitian armada dropped out of hyperspace, weapons blazing. "Multiple impacts," the tactical officer shouted. "Our Zotharian allies are being overwhelmed." Michael gripped the command chair as their vessel shuddered under another barrage. "Get us out of here! Emergency jump to—" His words died as a sickly green fog billowed across the view screen, engulfing their Velnari support ships. The insectoid vessels spasmed, their crews dying in agony as Jokazran's bioweapons did their gruesome work. "Sir," the comms officer's face was ashen, "we're receiving distress calls from a dozen rebel outposts. They're all under attack." Michael's blood ran cold as the horrifying realization sank in. This wasn't a counterattack. This was annihilation. Weeks blurred into months as the remnants of the human resistance fled from system to system, always one step ahead of Jokazran's relentless onslaught. Billions perished as loyalist forces deployed ever more horrific weapons against rebel strongholds and civilian targets alike. On a desolate moon at the edge of known space, Michael stared at the latest casualty reports, his hands shaking. They were losing, not just the war, but any hope for humanity's survival. "There might be a way," Zara Krell said softly, laying a datapad on the rickety table. "But you're not going to like it." Michael's eyes widened as he scanned the information. An ancient AI, a doomsday weapon of unimaginable power, and a price that made his skin crawl. "You can't seriously be considering this," Jenna protested. "Eternal servitude to some alien computer? It's madness." But as alerts flashed of another Cation fleet closing in, Michael knew they were out of options. He met Zara's eyes and gave a curt nod. "Make the call." The derelict alien installation loomed before them, a twisted spire of impossible geometries that hurt the eye to look upon. As Michael led his team through corridors choked with dust and shadows, the Oversoul's emotionless voice guided them deeper into the heart of the long-dead civilization's final legacy. Zara worked feverishly at an ancient console, her fingers dancing across controls never meant for human hands. With a sound like tearing reality, a shimmering sphere coalesced in the center of the vast chamber. The nanoswarm. Michael stared at the roiling mass of infinitesimal machines, each one capable of reducing entire worlds to component atoms. This was power beyond imagining. Power to save humanity or doom the galaxy. His hand hovered over the activation key. He thought of Earth, of Grayson, of countless lives snuffed out by Cation cruelty. He pressed the button. The nanoswarm surged forth, reality warping around it as it tore through hyperspace toward Azkalir. On the command ship's view screen, Michael watched with cold satisfaction as the Cation throne world vanished in a seething tide of gray. But something was wrong. The swarm wasn't stopping. It split, multiplied, each new segment hurtling toward another inhabited world with implacable purpose. "What's happening?" Jenna demanded. "Why isn't it shutting down?" Zara's fingers flew across the console, her face pale. "We've lost control. The failsafes, they're not responding." Horror dawned as they watched world after world, consumed by the ravenous nanites. Cation, human, Zotharian, the swarm devoured all without discrimination, stripping entire planets down to lifeless husks. A priority transmission cut through the shock and despair. Michael's breath caught as Alara's face appeared on the screen, smoke and flames visible behind her. "Michael, what have you done?" His sister's voice was raw with anguish. "You've doomed us all." As the unstoppable gray tide swept outward, consuming all in its path, Michael realized the terrible truth. In his quest for vengeance, he had unleashed something far worse than the Cations could ever have been. Now, with time running out and billions already dead, he faced an impossible choice. Find a way to stop the nanoswarm and save what remained of galactic civilization, or watch helplessly as life itself was extinguished, one world at a time. Michael's eyes widened as the horrifying reality sank in. The nanoswarm, meant to be their salvation, had become an insatiable plague devouring everything in its path. Billions were already dead, and countless worlds reduced to lifeless husks. "We've lost control," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The failsafes aren't responding." The command center erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human colonies, Cation strongholds, neutral worlds, all falling victim to the relentless tide of nanites. Michael's comm unit crackled to life, and Alara's face appeared on the screen. Smoke billowed behind her, alarms blaring in the background. "Michael, what have you done?" His sister's voice was raw with anguish. "You've doomed us all." The accusation hit him like a physical blow. He had unleashed this horror in his quest for vengeance. Now he faced an impossible choice. Find a way to stop the nanoswarm, or watch as all life in the galaxy was extinguished. "Alara," he said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "we need your help. Is there anything in the Cation databases about stopping this?" His sister's eyes darted off screen for a moment. "There might be. Zokazran, he's been obsessed with ancient weapons. He claims to have found termination protocols for the nanoswarm." Hope flared in Michael's chest, quickly tempered by grim reality. "Where?" "In his command bunker on Azkalir. But Michael, the planet's already overrun. It's suicide." He met Jenna's eyes across the bridge. She nodded, understanding without words. "We don't have a choice," Michael said. "Assemble a team. We're going in." Hours later, their ship emerged from hyperspace above Azkalir. The planet's surface writhed with a sea of gray, the nanoswarm having reduced the once proud Cation capital to a nightmare landscape. Michael surveyed his ragtag team. Zara Krell, her fingers dancing across alien tech. Scritch, the Velnari warrior, mandibles clicking with anticipation. A handful of human survivors, their faces etched with tenacity and fear. "Remember," Michael said as they prepared to drop, "we have one shot at this. Get in, grab the protocols, get out. Don't engage the swarm unless absolutely necessary." Their shuttlecraft plunged through the atmosphere, nanites swarming around them like a living storm. They touched down hard on a strip of bare rock, the only patch not yet consumed. "Move!" Michael shouted, leading the charge toward the looming silhouette of Zo-Khazran's bunker. The air itself seemed alive, thick with microscopic machines hungering for organic matter. A scream tore through the comm channel as one of the human soldiers stumbled. His leg instantly transformed into a seething mass of gray. Scritch's plasma cutter carved a path through the swarm, but for every swath they cleared, more nanites surged in to fill the void. They fought their way deeper into the ruined city, the cost in lives mounting with each step. A massive blast door loomed before them, sealed tight against the apocalypse outside. Michael turned to Dr. Voss, the brilliant xenobiologist who had become so much more to him during their long struggle. "Can you get us in?" Voss nodded grimly, attaching a device to the locking mechanism. As she worked, Michael saw movement from the corner of his eye, a tide of nanites coalescing into a massive wave. "Incoming!" he shouted, raising his weapon. The team opened fire, their energy weapons carving holes in the surging mass. But it wasn't enough. The wave crashed over them, and Voss screamed as the nanites found purchase on her suit. "Go!" she yelled, her voice distorting as the machines invaded her systems. "I'll hold them back!" Michael hesitated for a fraction of a second, his heart tearing. Then he made the impossible choice, diving through the opening blast door with the others, as Voss's finger found the detonator on her belt. The explosion sealed the entrance behind them, buying precious seconds. But Michael knew the sacrifice was only temporary. They had to move fast. They fought their way deeper into the bunker, battling through automated defenses and pockets of nanites that had breached the inner sanctum. Finally, they reached the central chamber. Emperor Zo-Khazran stood before a bank of screens, his once regal form now haggard and wild-eyed. He spun to face them, teeth bared in a feral snarl. "Carter," he hissed, "come to gloat over the ruin you've brought upon us all?" Michael leveled his weapon at the Caitian's chest. "The protocols, now!" Zo-Khazran's laugh was a broken thing. "You think I'd let you have them? To save your wretched species after what you've done?" With a speed belying his deteriorated state, the Emperor lunged for a console. Michael fired, but too late. Zo-Khazran's claws raked across the controls, and streams of data vanished from the screens. "No!" Michael roared, grabbing the Caitian by the throat. "What have you done?" Zo-Khazran's eyes gleamed with mad triumph. "Doomed us all, together." A tremor ran through the bunker. The nanoswarm was breaking through. "Wait!" Zara called out, her fingers flying across an alien interface. "There's something here. The original controls. They still exist." Michael's grip on Zo-Khazran loosened. "Where?" Zara's eyes met his, a mix of hope and dread. Where it all began. The precursor homeworld. As if on cue, the bunker's walls began to dissolve, gray tendrils seeping through. They were out of time. "New plan," Michael said, his mind racing. "Zara, Scritch, take the Velnari ships. Use the wormhole drive. Buy us time." Understanding dawned on their faces. It was a suicide mission, but the only chance to save what remained of the galaxy. Michael turned to Alara and the handful of surviving humans. "We're making a blind jump, our last shot." As they raced for their ship, Michael cast one final glance at the dissolving bunker. At all they were leaving behind, the nanoswarms surged after them, a relentless tide of destruction. But ahead lay a slim chance at salvation, the precursor world, and perhaps, if they were incredibly lucky, a way to undo the horror they had unleashed upon the stars.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.